So I'd like to welcome my guest, Karin. She's a functional medicine nutritionist. She's certified with meditation and a breathwork teacher, fitness trainer, author, wife, mama, and founder of Nutritious and Delicious. She's been a leader in the nutrition and wellness industry for the last 15 years. And she founded Nutritious and Delicious in 2011 in Australia after a corporate career in law and finance. And her aim was to touch as many people as possible and provide knowledge, support, guidance, and advice on building a healthier lifestyle. She has led workshops and nutrition programs in Singapore, Hong Kong, Greece, Thailand, Bali, Israel, and Australia. And she has a passion to educate and ask questions and to bring to light the importance of natural, nourishing foods. And she's a passionate speaker, a journalist in the area of nutrition, has written numerous publications, and is also the author of 2 children's recipe books branded The Rosy Cheeked Kids. So I'd like to welcome Karin. I follow her on Instagram, and she just posts amazing things. So I'm anxious to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I'm always excited to be on and humbled that people want me on their podcast. So thank you.
Yeah, so for me, as far as my background, I'm a chiropractor, a clinical nutritionist. My husband actually is a chef, but I don't want to say not a healthy chef. They have an Irish pub, right? So not the healthiest foods. So that's for me one area that I am wanting to grow in as far as like recipes, tips and strategies for patients and followers just to have a balanced diet, meal planning. What are your recommendations for that?
So, I don't follow any specific diet. I don't promote a specific diet. I don't believe in a specific diet. I really, really think that we are all personalized beings. So we all have like a really, really, really unique genetic, physical makeup. And the way that we eat needs to suit that. So, how do we know what's good for us and what's not good for us? And how do we know if we should be eating certain foods or we should be avoiding certain foods? That's where being connected to your body and understanding the signs and symptoms that your body sends you comes in handy. So, I'll give you an example. If you are eating, certain foods, but you struggle with gut issues like constipation or maybe diarrhea, or maybe you're really, really bloated or you have reflux, right? Then most likely the food you're eating is not doing you a favor. Another, sign is brain fog. When you're not on it, you're not sharp, you're not, fierce in that sense that you remember everything. Another sign is your skin. People struggle with a lot of different skin issues, from rosacea, eczema, acne. These are all really, really big signs, big red flags that your body isn't loving your nutrition. So those just a few, but energy, your menstrual cycle, your immune system, these are all signs that your body isn't loving your immune system. So if you feel perfect, then probably what you're eating is pretty much good for you. But if you don't feel great, then it's time to maybe make some changes in your diet. And so for me, I think the biggest thing that people, it can be really overwhelming, nutrition, right?
Oh,
Like if
sure.
you go online, it's like, oh my God. So for me, I always tell people start off with the basic stuff, like drop the junk. Everybody knows what junk is. Drop the junk. Eat food that comes from nature, comes from a tree, comes from the ground, was an animal, eat it. If it comes from a box, a jar, a can, a packet, probably best avoid it, you know? And the second one is to drink a lot of water, which is, again, something that's so simple. Everybody knows it, but few people are actually doing it well and properly. Like people are a lot of the time dehydrated, not drinking enough, not drinking good quality water, over caffeinating, over alcohol. So really for me it starts with the basic stuff. Let's start with basic things. And I think that's where you start off and you start to explore what works for you. Maybe you pay attention to if you've eaten a lot of dairy, what does that do to you? Or if you've eaten a lot of gluten, what does that do to you? And maybe if you can start to put one and one together, then you can start understanding if something works for you, if something doesn't work for you. In functional medicine, we can use all these fancy schmancy tests, like food sensitivity tests and all that. And that's great, for people who have the ability to do these tests, because they're quite expensive, but you don't need to. You really don't need to. You really just need to go to the food and eat proper real food. And it's tough, because if you're juggling a lot of things, like if you're a career person and you've got a family, or you don't have time, or you're commuting, it can be hard, right? Because as you know, to eat well, you need to put some effort into that. You need to put some thought. You need to make time to cook, and to menu plan, and to shop, and to create these healthy foods. It's not so easy to get, really healthy foods out, and it's probably more expensive as well.
Oh, for sure. Now, what inspired you to write the children's recipe books?
So my journey into nutrition, or into the natural world, became because I got sick with two autoimmune diseases.
Okay.
And that's why I quit my career in law and finance, and moved I went to study. I went to study to help myself. And then I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. And that's how I got into this world. And then, I became a mom, right? I had two kids, and I started sending my kids to school and to birthday parties. And I started to see what was being served to children. And, I was fortunate enough to live in many places in the world. So I kind of got to observe many different cultures and people. It's pretty straightforward, I can say, across all boards. People feed their kids junk, real junk. And it's acceptable, which is what's really sad about it. It's very acceptable to feed your children junk food. It doesn't really matter what socioeconomic or cultural or national background you come from. Most people are not feeding their children proper food, real food. And I had a really good friend at the time who was a very passionate chef and a food stylist. She co-authored the book with me, and we were just passionate about it. We were like, let's make this easy for people. Let's teach them how to make like proper lunch boxes, from real food. And let's teach them to make party food for kids that is actual real food. And it doesn't compromise the fun part. And it's not too much work in the kitchen, but it's also something that, you're actually feeding your kids real food. You're starting off somewhere. And that was our inspiration. And we had a lot of fun doing that. Although I don't know if I'm ever going to write a recipe book again. It's quite hard. Like
Oh,
the recipe part is very easy.
sure.
It's the whole putting the book together and reading it and make sure, like, there's the editing is, yeah, it's hard work.
Exactly. Well, that's really interesting because I always think, just from my limited travels, the US is a lot more processed, whereas over in, Greece, Israel, Australia, maybe a little bit less, but you see it across the board. That's
Yeah,
really
I lived in a few places in Asia. I lived in Australia. My kids go to camp in America, so I know the American system as well. Um, Kids eat real crappy food because they're a great market to market to. So food retailers market to them very easily. And the food that they eat is very addictive. So the sugar and the salt and the MSG, it's a super addictive flavor, and people get addicted to it, especially kids, and then they want to eat more and more, and they want to buy it. So, of course you're going to open a pack of Doritos and you're going to eat the whole thing because it's got tons of MSG in it and sugar. So you want to eat more of it,
exactly.
whereas if you made homemade potato chips, maybe you wouldn't eat as many.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I even noticed because my son's 3, I notice a big difference when he has junk from somewhere else, and not what he has at home. And it takes about 72 hours, I've noticed, for him to kind of detox that out of his system.
100%. And I used to call it the Sunday shenanigans, because the kids used to go to parties on Sunday and they used to eat like sugar, and food colorings and God knows what else. And as a parent, it's really hard as well. What do? You don't let your kid eat these foods. At some point you have to kind of decide if you want your kids to be part of something or not. And, 3 is easy, but when you've got older kids, it's a little bit harder to kind of, tell them no. And the kids used to come home and they used to run around in circles. They used to be like so hyper and so out of control. There'd be like tons of meltdowns.
Yes.
And that's how it flags itself with little kids. It's that meltdowns, it's that real uncontrolled blood sugar level, and the food colorings, which will really affect children with, ADHD or ADD. But later on, with the elder kids, you're then looking at, if you're eating this very low fiber diet, you don't have enough vegetables in there, you don't have enough protein in there, you're eating a lot of refined carbohydrates, a lot of sugar, then you're actually looking at change of your microbiome. And that's big, because that will start to affect things like depression and anxiety, which we now know is a huge issue with teenagers. So, it's going to affect depression, anxiety. It's going to affect their skin, acne. Anyhow, teenagers have, acne, but if you're not eating a good diet, you're going to have really bad acne, and that may affect your self-confidence, and it's such a delicate age, because anyhow, everything there is just, hard. It might affect your weight. It might affect your thyroid. There's so many things that could be affected by your diet. But if you've been brought up believing that you could eat whatever you want and food doesn't really affect you, and you've gotten yourself now addicted to these foods, it's really hard to take a teenager and change their diet. I don't expect teenagers to eat like adults in terms of like, really watching what they're eating and make sure that they're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. But I do expect them to have very good habits from home.
Sure.
And that's on the parents. That's the job of the parents. Just like you teach your child not to swear or to hit other people in the playground or at school, hopefully, you teach your children as well what's real food for their body and what's not. And it's okay to go out with your friends and have a pizza occasionally or an ice cream, whatever. But what you eat at home, 80% of the time, these home meals that you do, it makes a big difference,
Absolutely.
on their habits. And I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Maya Shetty. She's a very well-known pediatrician from the US. She's an amazing neurologist who's a pediatric neurologist, and she wrote an amazing book. And in the book, she brings this interesting statistic saying that children that eat dinner with their parents most days, most nights, they have higher IQs than children that don't. So it's not just what we're feeding the kids, it's the spending time, it's this understanding of like food as a ritual. And for me, I was very curious about it, because I was looking at statistics of children's health, and I was noting how bad the statistics are, specifically for nations that are well off, like most of these children were vaccinated, were breastfed, were given, good sanitary conditions. So these children don't need to have bad health, but they actually do. And also I was looking at all this new area, which is pretty new, and it only exists in places in the West, of these food aversions, children that won't eat. Like, I have lots of patients that tell me my children will not eat a
Yes.
vegetable, and then these children will only eat pasta or bread or cheese, like very bland type of foods. I went back to research cultures. What were people doing once? There was no kids' food. What were people doing? Nobody cooked a cheese toast for your child if you didn't eat dinner. You just ate what there was to eat as a family, right?
Right.
So that, it really interested me, and I dove deep into that. And I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or anything, but my 2 kids are good eaters. I don't say that they don't eat junk, and I don't say that they don't like to eat junk. They do. But they have good habits. Like, they can cook. My kids are much older than yours. They can cook well, and they know what healthy food means, and they know how to make good choices. Do they always make them? God, no. But they do know. And I think that for me, I was like, I did it. Like, I'm happy. They have that tool. They know
Yeah.
what's right and they know what's wrong.
Right.
And you don't need to make a big deal of it. It just really needs to be common sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What was your tactic when they were younger, um, to kind of get them away from junk food? If they would ask, why can't I have the Skittles or the M&Ms? Like, what was your tactic for that?
Great question. um, at the very young ages, when they really don't understand, you just say, it's not good for you. It's going to make you sick. It's not healthy for you. Mommy's protecting you, type of a thing. Just divert their attention. Have this instead. As they grew older, they were like, well, how come so and so is getting that in their lunchbox? And that's where you have to really model the behavior at home. And then you also have to tell them the truth. This is what it does to your body. Obviously, age appropriate, right? What I noticed that was when my kids were eating junk food, they would often complain of a stomach ache, a running tummy. And then I would say, can you see? I would make a connection. Can you see that when you ate this and this, you had a sore tummy? And then it's not in one day. You have to like repetitively do that. And they got it. They got it. And even today, my kids are teenagers. I still will say to them, my daughter will say to me, oh, I had a really bad week of food. Like I ate a whole lot of sweets. We were on a trip and look at my skin. And I'm like, yeah, sugar is not great for your skin. So she knows.
Yes,
She knows. I can't control you can't control teenagers. There's just no chance. So you got to let them fly into the world, and you have to believe that they know how to make good. So she was like, now this week I'm gonna make sure I'm having breakfast at home, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm, packing a lunch, and so she knows.
great. Well, I think as you
Yeah,
said, having that foundation, that life skill definitely makes it easier as they get older.
yeah. But a lot of adults don't have that foundation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so when you're in that situation, when you have very, very bad eating habits, it's hard for you to model that behavior. So for a lot of people, I always recommend doing like baby steps. Like don't jump in too far. Timeline it. Say in the next 3 months, if I drink every day, say Coke Zero or Coca-Cola or Pepsi, whatever. For the next 3 months, my goal is to swap to water. That's it. That's the one goal. Like if you set small, achievable goals,
Sure.
there's a chance that you're going to make it. But if you say, I'm going to completely change my lifestyle in 3 months, you're probably going to give in after 1 or 2 days. So setting small, achievable goals, and then also having a very strong why, like knowing why you want to do this, like to remind yourself. Because when you have a food addiction, you're addicted to Coke Zero or to sugar or to carbs or whatever it is. When you take that out of your diet, you maybe have 1 or 2 days where you're okay, and then the cravings kick in, and then it's going to be very hard. And if you don't have a very strong why, and if you're not set, then it's going to be tough for you. So you gotta master your why. You gotta be very mindful about it, and work on those goals and figure it out, and how am I going to do this? I'm going to take out all the Coke from my house because if it's in the house, I'm going to drink it.
For sure. Well, yeah, and as you've said, the processed food, I mean, we're talking about truly a chemical addiction. It's not food. So you almost have to go through a detox with that.
It's like an addiction to drugs. You really, my weight loss girls, I tell them all the time, like in my groups, people actually go through proper, sugar addictions, and they have to get off sugar. Sugar was proven to be more addictive than cocaine.
Yes.
So when you're having sugar after every meal and you've got that sugar craving, it's going to take you a long time to get off that. 21 days takes your brain to recover from a sugar addiction if you're really, really working hard. You've got to be really strong. You've got to create an environment that doesn't make you fall back into that addiction. It's like if you're an alcoholic, you don't go back into a bar. If you've got sugar addiction, you don't buy sugar into the house.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell my patients, you can't eat it if it's not there.
Yeah,
Something so simple, but again,
100%.
just being mindful, and conscious of how you're spending your money, how you're investing in your health. It was funny because right now, of course, fruit is very expensive in the States, and our kids eat fruit like it's water, like it's going out of style. And my husband commented on how expensive it is. And I said, well, it's easier to spend money on their health and wellness than on medical bills and doctor's visits. So it's just kind
100%.
of like shifting that mindset.
It's true. And it's so sad that healthy food is expensive. Like
It is.
people say that to me all the time, and I'm like, you're right. It is more expensive to eat healthy. Can you do it on a budget? You can, but it's harder. It's much easier to eat processed food if you're on a budget. But as you say, you either pay the farmer or you pay the doctor, depending on who you want to pay. And unfortunately, yeah, that is, and that's why, buying seasonal, looking for farmers markets, growing some of the stuff that you buy is handy. But unfortunately, I think across the board in every place that I'm speaking to now, this inflation of prices of fruits and vegetables is ridiculous.
It's crazy. They make it so that it's harder to be healthy, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like that you mentioned, with the microbiome, and as kids get older, it can lead to other issues. I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen so many, 18, 19, 20-year-old females on antidepressants, on the diagnosis of endometriosis, PCOS, and as you've said, food is medicine. Are you nourishing it? Are you creating hormone imbalances? Are you dealing with the gut? What's your thoughts on that?
So in functional medicine, right, we have root causes, right? We say there's a couple of root causes for your health or your ill health, right? So it could be things that are physical, like your nutrition, your sleep, your exposure to toxins, um, the water you drink, the air you breathe, that type of stuff. And there could be also like spiritual, mental, emotional, trauma style root causes that, are going to affect you as well. When you're growing, you need a whole lot of nutrients because you're constantly producing new cells, you're constantly producing neurotransmitters, and you're constantly producing hormones. So a diet of someone that wants to actually produce properly, these basic things that your body needs, is a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables. So we're speaking, like for a good, healthy microbiome, you need to be eating 30 different vegetables a week. That's a lot. That's a big diversity. So it's not only eating a lot, so you could eat a whole lot of cucumbers, but that's not going to solve your problem. You got to eat diverse.
Right.
So it's the diversity of eating a whole lot of fruits and vegetables. And then the second very important thing that your body needs is protein. Protein is essential because protein breaks down into amino acids, and amino acids are kind of the base of your hormones and your neurotransmitters and even your cells. So if your diet is low in protein, which most Western diets are,
Mm-hmm.
and your diet is low in vegetables, which again, most Western diets are, you've got a problem. And so what happens is you start to create these nutritional deficiencies. You start to get low on vitamin D because you're not spending enough time outdoors. You're in front of your computer, you're indoors, whatever, right? Generation iPad.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to create other nutritional deficiencies like the B vitamins and iron and magnesium and zinc. And your body just is running on empty. It doesn't have what it needs to actually produce, a proper working body, And if you're eating the wrong kind of fats, instead of eating things like avocados and nuts and seeds and olives and olive oil, you're eating processed, chips and crisps, and you're using canola oil and vegetable oil and, these seed oils, then the health of your cells starts to deteriorate. And that, it happens very quickly. People think, oh, we used to think of people getting old and being sick, but we're seeing younger and younger people, diabetes and PCOS and endometriosis and anxiety, depression, autoimmunity, the lot. And that's happening because at a very young age, but they're not fed what their body needs. There's just like, it's like, how can your car run without fuel? Or if it's an electric car, how can your car run without electricity? It won't. It starts to have problems. And the microbiome, so this is your gut. This is a really important part of your health. And your microbiome thrives from getting this diverse fruit and vegetable diet. but also it thrives from getting probiotics, good bacteria, which once used to be abundant in people's life and diet because we used to have a very outdoorsy type of people used to plant things. They used to like dig in the soil. They used to have animals. They used to, hang out outdoors. They used to ferment foods to save, to actually save them, right? The people used to plant in the summer and harvest in the summer. Sorry, plant in the spring, harvest in the summer. And then they would save it for the winter. So they would like pickle things, right? And they would make like pickled cucumbers or sauerkraut or kimchi or whatever. And that was a very good source of probiotics. No one eats that now. It's like weird people's food. Um, so, and then we introduced a whole lot of things that really kill the bacteria in the gut, like oral contraceptive pill, like ibuprofen style drugs, pain relief. We also introduced a lot of antibiotics, a lot more antibiotics than we need. And it's not only that it's not only antibiotics that you take, it's the stuff that gets into your system from the water, from the chicken, from the eggs, from the dairy. You're getting a whole lot of antibiotics through other things, even if you're not taking antibiotics. And that busts the bacteria in your gut, the good and the bad. And alcohol use and stress. So when you've got all those, your gut microbiome is not going to be working well, and that is seriously going to affect your health. It's we in naturopathy, in the natural world, we say all disease begins in your gut. That was Hippocrates. That's what he said, and it really is true. It really is true. Like the gut is where we usually start in functional medicine. But I have a lot of young patients, as do a lot of my colleagues, and at very young ages, we're seeing really crazy stuff, that we wouldn't have seen probably 50 years ago at young people's age. But there's you know what? I don't want to leave it at like a depressing end in this sense. I want to say that the body has this incredible ability to heal itself. It can really repair itself. Even if you're very, very, very sick, you can still get better, and you can still lead a great life if you know how to help yourself. And these are great times in a sense because people like you have podcasts and people can start to access information through podcasts or through blogs or through Instagram, and they can start to gather information that can help them turn, on the right path towards helping themselves.
Yeah. That's a great point. My husband actually asked me a question. He said, a great topic for a podcast or social media would be, how do you know you're doing the right thing? Because in the 70s, we thought margarine was the right thing. We thought not eating eggs was the right thing. And I said, there's a short answer to that. We're more educated and it's common sense, going back to what our ancestors did, doing what cultures have done for thousands of years, and not listening to big ag, big pharma, the marketing. I think you're right. I think people are getting more educated and smarter and more mindful, which is a beautiful thing.
Hopefully. I fear a lot that big pharma is using a lot of fear tactics on us.
True.
We saw that during COVID, and that's scary because they're convincing us. And I'm not against pharma. I'm not against modern medicine. My dad's a doctor. I don't hate doctors. I have nothing, like, I love doctors. They're great. But I think, and in some places in the world, it works, like in Germany, for example, where modern medicine and natural medicine hold hands together.
Yes.
And the doctors are educated on that. They know they're not going to give you straight away a medicine. They're going to give you some homeopathy or some vitamins or something before they run. But if you do need it, they will give you the medicine. And that's what I want. I want doctors and modern medicine to be more open-minded to other modalities of natural medicine to help their patients. That's, and for people to not be naive and kind of believe every single thing that they're told, because there's an agenda. I hope by now the world has started to understand that there's an agenda, and across everything, so many places in our lives, we're being spoon-fed something that they want us to think or believe in. which I think is something that we need to open our eyes to.
Yeah. I think, I mean, you're exactly right. Question, and I tell my patients this and my students this, question everything. Ask why,
And 100%.
ask the point, and just, yeah, be more mindful and informed. Yeah.
100%. And I think the more knowledge you have, no matter on what, the better your outcome is going to be. And I especially encourage moms to get educated about this. You know, sometimes it's not in your priorities to learn about nutrition. I mean, me and you probably love it, but some people are like, well, I couldn't care less. But a mom has so much influence in the house over what people eat, over what her kids eat, what her husband eats. If she just can educate herself a little bit about some natural things that she can help her family, support them through, diseases, just learn like if your kid's got a cold, ABC can help, before you rush and give them Tylenol or whatever.
Yes.
If the mom learns about basic nutrition, this is good, this is not as good, these are things that you shouldn't have in the house. Like this is not food that's worthwhile. Then that family has such a good chance of getting on the health wagon. I don't want to just minimize the dads here because some dads are awesome, but I see that when the mom makes the change in the house, and I have this a lot because a lot of women come to me first because they want to lose weight or they want to, fix their hormones or whatever. When they get on the bandwagon, the whole house does. The
Yeah.
whole house does.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they're a lot of the time the decision makers, the role models, the influencers in the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The CEOs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I will be sure to share your recipe books because I know a lot of my followers have so many questions on what to make, how to prepare, especially with kiddos. And I'll share your Instagram information. And I'm sure if there's any other questions, we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather. And I appreciate you inviting me on and having me and allowing me to share a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time.